If you didn't come from an AdWords campaign, the conversion tag from AdWords doesn't fire. It just lays low. It stays still. It stays dormant. Okay? So conversion tag is placed on the individual page that signifies a conversion. If you have your conversion tag installed on multiple pages, every time one of those pages loads, you're going to fire a conversion and you're going to be miscounting your conversions. And that's going to ruin your calculations when it comes to tracking ROI. So for example, your purchase, your sale page, that goes on an order confirmation page in your checkout cart process. If it's a sign-up form, whenever somebody signs up for your newsletter, in order to really track AdWords conversions this way, you need to be redirecting the visitor to a thank you page after submitting the form or after submitting their email address. They have to go to a thank you page. And that thank you page will be the page that contains the conversion tracking tag. It's always on the page that the person lands on after taking the action. For example, if you have a sales form on your website, somebody comes to your website, they fill out their name, their email, if they need a message, a phone number, an address, whatever it may be, whatever required fields, and then they hit submit. After they hit submit, you need to set up your website that it redirects them. It could be that you have this set up already. If you don't, sometimes there's something called an inline message. Sometimes forms will just display, thank you very much for submitting your form. That type of setup will not be possible to track AdWords conversions in the way that we're going to be setting them up, which is the easiest, most straightforward, most reliable way. You need to configure your forms to redirect to a separate page. Thank you. And it has to be a page that a person could only get to from submitting a form. So for example, you don't want to redirect them back to the home page, because if you have your conversion tracking tag on your home page, then every single time somebody comes to your home page, your conversion tracking tag is going to fire, and you're not going to be just tracking people who submitted forms, you'll be tracking everybody who's been to your home page as a conversion, and obviously you don't want to do that. So you want to have a separate page that could only be navigated to by clicking submit on a given form, and you want to make sure that the conversion tracking tag is then installed. It's a script. You want to make sure that's installed on the body of the page on that specific thank you page. Keep in mind, like I mentioned, you could track multiple conversions. So if you have 5 key pages with 5 different types of sales forms, you could create 5 separate conversions, and I recommend you do that. Because most likely, those forms are all for different types of services that have different pricing tiers. They represent different types of clients, and they represent different opportunities to your company. In that case, you might be willing to pay more for a conversion for a certain form submission, but less for a other type of form submission on your website. So you'd want to have multiple separate conversions, which I will show you how to set up, and you'll have separate thank you pages. Every form will have their own dedicated thank you page, and that is going to be how you keep track of the separate conversions as long as those conversions have somewhat separate values. If every single form submission is equally important to you, then by all means, you could really just use one thank you page and have one conversion. And if you'd like to see which forms they're coming from, you could always use Google Analytics for that. But I would recommend 9 times out of 10 setting up different thank you pages for different form submissions. Okay? When that page loads, when the page with your conversion tag loads, a conversion is recorded in AdWords tracking back to the keyword ad group campaign that triggered the conversion. Okay? Now, for those of you who are thinking ahead, you might have a certain question. You might say, hey, let's say on Monday, somebody clicked my ad for the keyword desk chairs, and they came to my website, but they didn't convert. Then on Tuesday, they came back and they did a Google search for file cabinets. They saw another pop-in ad, another keyword in our account triggered an ad, and they clicked on the file cabinets, and then they went and they bought file cabinets and desk chairs. They converted after clicking on the keyword file cabinets. Which keyword gets the credit for the conversion? On one hand, you have people saying, well, the desk chairs keyword was the first time you were introduced to pop-in, so that keyword should get the credit. On this hand, the people are saying, well, the desk chairs keyword and the desk chairs landing page didn't drive a conversion. It was the file cabinet search the next day that drove the conversion. So who gets the credit? We're going to talk about all that. That's called attribution modeling. It's very advanced stuff. We're not going to cover all the different types of attribution modeling in AdWords, but by default, AdWords is going to credit the last AdWords click. So in our scenario, file cabinets would record a conversion and not the office chairs keyword. The office chairs keyword would record 0 conversions, while the file cabinets keyword would record 1 conversion. Okay? And there's other ways to see. There's assisted conversions. There's going to be other conversion columns of data that we'll be able to look at, like click-assisted conversions, clicks that came before the click that converted. So we'll be able to see that data, which keywords led to additional searches, which keywords triggered additional ad clicks after it that led to a conversion. We'll be able to see all that. But to keep things simple, forget about all that. You don't need it for now. Most likely you won't need it at all. To keep it simple, the last click before the conversion is the keyword, ad group, time of day, campaign that gets credit for the conversion. And we're going to talk about conversion windows, and we'll talk about a little bit more about attribution in a little bit. Okay, so that's how form submissions work. Now let's talk about, and of course in the next video we are going to quickly, not quickly, but we're going to do it slowly like we've been doing everything. We're going to go through the steps to generate your conversion tracking tag, to install it on your website, and to test, and most importantly to test to make sure it's working. Now let's take a look at the other type of forms of conversion tracking, which is phone call conversions. Not all businesses run on form submissions. Lots and lots of businesses get lots and lots of phone calls, and you want to track those phone calls. If somebody comes to your website and makes a phone call to you, and they came to your website after clicking on an ad, you paid for them, you want to know if they called you. You want to know which keyword led to someone calling you. And there's a few different ways we could do this with AdWords, and I'm going to show you in more detail in the next video at the computer how to set up call conversions. But there's a few different types. First off, we have calls from ads themselves. Remember we saw those phone number extensions? Google could track if somebody sees your ad. You're not charged for it. If somebody sees your ad on the computer before clicking and you have a phone number extension, somebody picks up their cell phone and dials what they see on the screen, we could track that. And how is that done? With a Google forwarding number. We'll show you how to set that up. We've talked about that already when we talked about setting extensions. You need the Google forwarding number. You guys remember what that is. It's a separate number that Google gives you that displays on the screen that allows Google to track which keyword the click came from. And when somebody dials the number they see, it gets forwarded to your main office number, whatever number you choose. And in order to track these call from ads, we have to have either call extensions enabled or a call-only campaign running. There's two different ways we could have a call from ad being tracked. That is, if we have a call extension or a call-only campaign. Now you might be wondering and saying, there's a third way. What if I put my phone number in the ad text? So two answers. One, that's your phone number. If somebody dials your phone number, there's no way for Google to track it. Second of all, in most cases, Google will disapprove you putting the number in the ad text. You're not allowed to do that. So there's two ways. You have either a call extension or a call-only campaign, and that will allow you to track phone calls from ads, not from your website. Phone calls appended to ads with a call extension. Okay, the more complex, but often more valuable form of tracking phone calls are calls to a phone number on your site. What if somebody comes to your site and in your header there's your phone number and somebody picks up the phone and dials? Many, many businesses operate that way. All local businesses, brick and mortar stores, stores that have hours, people call the number they see on the website. Okay? Now if somebody came to your website from an ad, there's a way to actually track that. And that's done by adding a tag to your site. There's two pieces of code. You need to add a little piece of JavaScript into the HTML of your web page. I know this is getting a little confusing. We're not going to go through this setup. We'll do it in a bonus course that's going to be appended to this entire course. It's going to be afterwards. It won't be on the test. It's done, but I want to just tell you how it's done. It's done by adding a piece of JavaScript and adding a separate tag and having the forwarding numbers enabled. So essentially what this is called DNI, Dynamic Number Insertion. If somebody comes to your website after clicking on a Google ad for your website, they land on your site, they'll actually see a different number than if somebody had come organically. Google's going to swap out the number that you have with a new number, with a Google forwarding number that you have enabled, and if somebody picks up the phone and calls that number, your phone will ring and Google will know that this person came to your site from a certain ad click. Some people don't like this because people have 800 numbers, people have branded numbers like 1-800-Flowers.com. They don't want to use Google's forwarding numbers because it's bad for brand identity and brand awareness. For those companies, people use more advanced call tracking software like CallRail, like Mongoose Metrics, like IfByPhone, and we use those for our clients as well. But DNI from Google is free, it's easy to set up, it's very effective, and it does the job for most of us. Okay, so that's how we would track phone calls to your site. The third way of tracking phone calls, and this you don't need as much complicated integration, is clicks on your number on your mobile phone. Because if somebody's on a mobile site, they came to your website from an ad, and now they're on your site, they're scrolling down on their iPhone, and they see your number. If they click your number, the iPhone or the Samsung or whatever your smartphone is will open a dialog that says, should you call this number? So Google could actually track that as a click just by adding a certain type of conversion, a phone call conversion tracking tag to your site. And if your number gets clicked, it's not a forwarding number. If your number gets clicked and you choose to call that number, Google will track a conversion that this was a call from a mobile website. They click on the number of the mobile website. This is not as common as the first two. Calls from ads and calls from your website are the two most common forms and most important forms of phone call conversions to track. And just because we focus very heavily on form submissions, and a lot of businesses run form submissions, you should not be ignoring phone calls. If you don't get phone calls, or if below 15% of your leads come in through the phone, you can forget about phone call conversion tracking for now because you have more important things to spend your time on. But if above 20, 25, 30% of your business comes through the phone, you should be tracking that, because the same thing we spoke about in the beginning. You want to know which keywords, which ad groups, which campaigns, what time of the day, what geographic locations, what cities, what match types, what display URLs, what ad texts are leading to business, because that's how you optimize your campaign. You trim the fat, you cut out the wasted spend by identifying the parts of your campaigns that are working, by identifying the parts of the campaigns that are not working. You cut the ones that aren't working out, and you enhance and build upon the ones that are working. What do I mean by it's working? Conversion tracking. Tracking conversions is the way that I know what parts of my accounts are working. Conversions are the valuable actions my visitors are taking on my site, and I want to know which parts of my account, what keywords that I paid for are leading people to take those actions. So that's conversion tracking. Just to tie that all back together, that's why it's important to be both wary of phone calls and website form submissions, website conversions, whether it be viewing a key page, lead, sign up, purchase, or sales. A couple more things. Okay? Remember to always check the conversion tracking tag before you launch your campaigns. Okay? You want to make sure that you're actually tracking conversions. Oftentimes, if you implement the tag the wrong way, it won't work. Once again, just like we saw with remarketing, I'm going to show you super, super easy ways to go there and make sure that your conversion tracking is working. And just something we've touched upon, but just to wrap it all up, without tracking conversions, all your optimizations are guesswork. Okay? Just to repeat that beginning comment we started off with. Oftentimes, we'll look at an account without conversion tracking, and we'll think that it's doing really well, because there'll be keywords that have great click-through rates and low cost per click. But those keywords are really wasting money, because they're not converting. They're not sending good traffic. While keywords that are way, way expensive, much higher cost per click, much lower click-through rates, are really the keywords that are the ones that are driving the business. If I'm not tracking conversions, so maybe I'll optimize for click-through rate. I'll knock out the keywords that are getting a low click-through rate. I'll optimize for cost per click. I'll knock out the keywords that are too expensive. When what I'm really doing is knocking out the keywords that are generating the most business. If I only knew that, because I didn't have conversion tracking working. If I had conversion tracking set up, I would have known that, and I would have optimized for business. I would have optimized for revenue. I would have optimized for profit. And that's only possible with conversion tracking. So make sure there's some sort of valuable action your visitors could take that is being tracked. Back to the keyword, back to the ad group, back to the campaign. We will see you in a couple minutes. I will see you in a couple minutes at the computer, where we're going to talk about setting up the conversion tracking, going through all the technical steps to implement the tags, put them on your website, test to make sure they're working, and we're going to also talk about conversion windows, and we're going to talk about the difference between conversions and converted clicks. Stay tuned, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Cheers for now, and I'll see you in a couple minutes.